Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 15th of April, 2026. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it is that you will be joining us from on this edition of the Football Tribe UG. Now, it's a bit of a cold morning, heavy downpours this morning down in Kampala. But nonetheless, we are back again to once again go through the review of what we witnessed last night as PSG and Atletico Madrid advanced to the semifinals of the UEFA Champions League. We'll be giving you some key highlights and facts from that and what the implications are, but also we'll, peruse through what is left of the quarterfinals when Real Madrid play away to Bayern Munich today, while Arsenal take on Sporting CP. And I'll be giving you there's some disheartening news. We'll be revealing to you some facts and some disheartening news or concerning news if you're an Arsenal fan. So please bear in mind that that will come in the course of this broadcast. So many injury updates are from the Arsenal camp. I don't know how that will leave some of the Arsenal fans, whether it will leave them unsettled or otherwise. It remains an absolute fact that injuries are wrecking that Arsenal squad as we speak. Then also, we'll talk about the shenanigans from the Atletico Madrid game. Some fans or some Barcelona fans did feel hard done by. So I will be talking about those as well. Anyways, quickly, okay, before we get into it, oh, allow me to respond to this. Okay, apologies on that. I was responding to a very important message. So, but yeah, last night, like I said, Barcelona, despite winning by 2-1 against Atletico de Madrid, was still knocked out of the UEFA Champions League at the quarterfinals, and this is the third time that they have fallen against Atletico de Madrid in as far as the competition is concerned of the UEFA Champions League. First was back in 2014 when Atletico de Madrid eventually reached the final and lost to Real Madrid by 4-1 post extra time or after extra time. And then it happened again in 2016. That time in 2014, Atletico de Madrid knocked out Barcelona 2-1 on aggregate. I think it was a 1-1 draw at Barcelona's venue, and then Atletico Madrid won the reverse fixture by 0-0. Then in 2016, still, Atletico de Madrid knocked out Barcelona at the quarterfinals. I think Atletico de Madrid lost the game, the first leg, by 2-1, and then won the reverse fixture by 2-0. So they got knocked out 3-2 on aggregate score. This time around, they won the first leg by 2-0 at Camp Nou before losing the reverse fixture at the Riyadh Air Stadium by 2-1 in both occasions or both games. Barcelona getting a red card for Pau Kubasi in the first leg, and this time around it was Eric Garcia for the second leg as Atletico de Madrid went through. So those two occasions in 2014 and 2016 were both at the quarterfinals, just as much as this one was as well. And on the other two occasions, Atletico de Madrid reached the finals. And also, every time Atletico de Madrid have reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League, Real Madrid have been there as well. So coincidence? Maybe because it's happened two times, we could say it is a coincidence. But I think it will be very, very interesting to see what happens this time around. So I was looking at those key facts and I was thinking to myself, oh my, whoever faces Atletico de Madrid in the semifinals will have some shivers down their spine because of those intriguing facts. And also Bayern Munich, I do not know if they are alive to the fact that one, on two, every time Atletico de Madrid have knocked out Barcelona, they've reached the final. But every time Atletico de Madrid have reached the final, Real Madrid have also reached the final. And Real Madrid have often reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League in a World Cup year and often gone on to win it. From 1958, you have to when they won it, you have to go back to 2014 when they're winning the La Decima, but in between there you also have 2002, they won it. It was a World Cup year. Then you have 2018 was a World Cup year. Then also 2018, yes. You have 2022, also a World Cup year. So really, that one is more than just a coincidence. Bananas were 37 cents this week. Okay. That is Steve Bano joining us on this beautiful morning. For those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. And let us know what you think. So, anyways, so yeah, Barcelona getting knocked out at the hands of Atletico de Madrid. They are Spanish La Liga rivals. I do not want to think it's bigger news in Barcelona being knocked out by Atletico de Madrid, but I think what then makes the big headlines are the incidences that happened in the game. First of all, Barcelona had a penalty appeal for what they felt was a push on Dani Olmo in the area. That penalty was not given. Then there's a bit of a slight push or nudge on Alexander Soloth by Eric Garcia, which then culminates into a red card. A lot of people have wanted to blame the referee, Clement, the French referee, but it's not to say that he was perfect, but I think he handled the game fairly well. Initially, he pulls out his yellow card because he's thinking, yeah, it's a bit of a minimal foul and worthy of a yellow card. But also, before he dishes out the yellow card, then the linesman has waved his flag for an offside. So therefore, he's not obligated to give a yellow card in an offside foul, which means we're destined for the moment being all squashed altogether for Barcelona free kick. Then we are like, oh, hold on a minute, we need to have a review of this. They review it, and their verdict is there's no offside. So if there's no offside, then we have to go back to the referee. Now, this is where it changes the context. One, in the referee's opinion, it's a yellow card offense. But because his assistant has waved his flag for an offside, he's bound to go with what his linesman or assistant has seen on the touch or on the sidelines. As he waits for that, then VAR intervenes to say, okay, we have reviewed the footage, there's no offside. Now, because in the referee's sort of instance, it's a yellow card foul, they are not obligated to intervene. But they are intervening because they think there's a potential red card offense. So, how do we get to the red card? By them saying there's no offside in the first place. So, that is checked. Is the foul committed worthy of a red card? Now, the foul being committed may not ordinarily be worthy of a red card, but where and when is it committed? That becomes the key. First of all, Alexander Soloth is attempting to go on for goal. So it is deemed that in him being impeded, he is denied a clear and obvious goal scoring opportunity by being brought down by Eric Garcia. Same way we had in the first leg when Pau Kubasi was the culprit. And then the verdict is, please come to the monitor and have a review of this. I must acknowledge that from where I was sitting, it appeared like Eric Garcia had pushed or nudged Alexander Soloth. I do not know whether down on his legs it does trip him, because he appears to be tripped. But I failed to get footage that is close enough to have a clear view of that. but I would want to assume that the referee, when he went to the pitch side monitor, he was shown all possible angles for him to review that. Then there's a school of thought for Barcelona fans that at the time of him being tripped, Jules Koundé had run fast enough to recover for Eric Garcia not to be ordinarily the last man. Was that the case? It didn't feel that way, in my opinion, because I've tried to watch that moment, pause for pause, second for second, to see the moment of impact of the foul versus Jules Koundé. Now, it appears that at the first point of contact for the foul, Jules Koundé is not yet there. So, in Alexander Soloth going there, that's when he levels up. In Alexander Soloth going down, that's when he levels up. So, it becomes incredibly difficult to judge it as such in the context for Barcelona's complaint. But trust me, Barcelona fans and players think they have been robbed on here. Is that the case, that they've been robbed? Like I said, I certainly do not want to think so. Are there decisions that could have gone their way? Maybe. Is it one-sided that it's only Barcelona that have issues to complain about? Not really, in the game in specificity. For those of you that can't remember, there's a back pass, I think, from Frenkie de Jong that Joan Garcia gathers with his hands. There's an appeal on that. So he who seeks equity must come with clean hands. Then there's also another incident of Joan Garcia appearing to handle the ball on the edge, if not slightly outside the 18 yards box, around the D area. I don't know if that was reviewed as well. So Atletico de Madrid equally have their own concerns when it came to the officiation of the game. Hello, Adash. How are you? Good morning. Good to have you back. Pedri says we got robbed as usual. Again, that is exactly what we're talking about. Pedri thinks that the referee was biased in his handling of the different matters or occasions. Like I said, are there actions that he should have perhaps judged better? Yes. Are there things that he did right in the game? I want to believe so. For example, particularly in the moment leading to the red card, you see, I think it is Pedri who receives the ball, then makes a turn to his opposite direction, which is the side of his goal, and then that ball is nicked off his boot. Now, some Barcelona fans are of the view that in that moment itself, there was a foul before Atletico de Madrid go on to the break. So I do not want to believe so. I believe there was a clean win of the ball of Pedri in that particular incident. So then we go on the other side. But when you look at both instances of the red card, both from the first leg and the reverse fixture, it's Barcelona being culpable of or sort of suffering the consequences of them playing their high line. So there's that, So then you also have a key moment of Fermin Lopez being hit by Joan Mosso with his boot in the face. Now, according to the rules, there's something about that. Why didn't he go back to almost a penalty? Why did he give Gavi a yellow card and didn't give Koke one? There was a foul before Atleti's goal. This is robbery. Again, that's Pedri, a Barcelona fan joining us from Spain, giving us his views or his assessment of the referee's performances and some of the key incidents from that particular, game. So again, like I said, he adds that this competition uses the word AWS and is worth nothing anymore. Atletico will go and get battered like Inter. We might as well just resign from this stupid tournament. I guess there is no coffee for you. Ha ha ha. Pedri, there must be coffee for me either way. It was 4 cups if Barcelona went through. it was 10 caps if Atletico Madrid knocked you out. But anyways, as we review that, you remember what my prediction was. I said Barcelona were going to win 2-1 and would not go through. So that was a perfect score prediction for us. Albeit I got the other one wrong. So that one I must acknowledge. And I was just telling people that every time Atletico de Madrid have knocked out Barcelona at the quarterfinal, which has happened twice prior to yesterday, that is in 2014 and in 2016, they have gone on to reach the to reach the finals of the UEFA Champions League. Unfortunately for them, on both occasions, they met Real Madrid in 2014 and in 2016. So we're going to have to wait and see whether those fortunes will be overturned tonight, starting with Real Madrid playing away to Bayern Munich. If Real Madrid are knocked out by Bayern Munich, then one of those coincidences or sort of lines of exploration are out of the window. So we'll have to wait and see. Pedri with some unkind words says, I guess there's, okay, I don't want to get anyone coffee at all. Whereas I'll be one to hold you to your promise, but it is your prerogative if you decide as such not to give anybody a coffee this morning. But it is a cold morning, so a cup of coffee would be really, really worth it. Tell your stupid Atletico Madrid to get a coffee. I hate this stupid team. But by the way, as optimistic as you are, Pedri, or as any other Barcelona fan may have been, I'm sure deep down in your hearts, a couple of you or some Barcelona fans may have sort of had the reservation of, based on the historical context, that when it's come to the UEFA Champions League, Atletico de Madrid have always knocked out Barcelona. Then, also, the other key moment that was being questioned was Barcelona's third goal that was scored by Ferran Torres. The question was it in an offside position? I think it is without doubt that Ferran Torres is in an offside position. Then, now, the next question that was being asked is that Clement Lenglet gets a touch of the ball before it reaches Ferran Torres. Now, unfortunately, I'm not privy to the particular interpretation of that rule when it comes to a ball from opponents. Now, from my understanding of the rule, and it is not finite, that there must be intent of the opponent's player to play the ball in a particular direction. Take an example. If the ball is being passed back to a goalkeeper, even if you're in an offside position and you intercept that ball and go on to score, that goal will stand. Ball from opponent. So in this particular case, I think the interpretation is, whereas there is an intent to block the ball, the contact on the ball is deemed not intentional to play it in the opposite direction. So it brushes off of him before it finds Ferran Torres. Like I said, my interpretation of that rule is not finite, but that's what I gather at the moment. Should I find a better or different interpretation of the law, I'll come back and give you a feedback on that. So, but it is without question that Ferran Torres was in an offside position. Pedri is already asking questions. Exactly, it was of the defender. I hope it's Bayern versus PSG and Arsenal versus idiots. I want PSG versus Arsenal final. PSG wins it again. Come on, Pedri. You never wish for me any joy. Why? Anyways, we'll leave that at that. Yesterday, I was having an engagement with Stefan Morris, the Leyton Orient and Barcelona fan, who said for him what he envisions is a Bayern Munich versus Arsenal final, and then Bayern Munich win it. So it looks like there's you have two competing arguments or predictions in that regard. No joy for you. When I'm sad, you are sad too. I was already sad from the weekend. Look at what happened to us against Bournemouth. I mean, we're still trying to recover from that. There's no guarantees that we are winning tonight because Sporting CP is a very, very dangerous team. So many injuries within the camp, as we are going to review when it gets to that particular fixture. So But it is what it is. We all have our different opinions and thoughts on some of these things. So, but basically, I thought in terms of the performance, I thought first of all, Barcelona were really, really good, especially in the opening half. But just to revert back on the incident involving Fermin Lopez and Joan Mosso. Now, according to the rules of FIFA, and I want to read this one out word for word for us to get the key context. A goalkeeper kicking an attacker in the head is a serious foul punishable by a red card, in brackets sending off, for violent conduct or serious foul play, resulting in a direct free kick or penalty for the opposing team. So, this is the other second call for which Barcelona think they should have been awarded a penalty. Now, the same rule continues to add that even if accidental, such action is treated as dangerous play, and referees are instructed to protect players from head injuries. Now, two facts we cannot ignore in this particular case, or in the case involving Fermin Lopez and Joan Mosso. Obviously, I do not know what the interpretation of the referee was in the moment, or that of VAR, but I'll try and guess for purposes of explaining. So, what happens is that you have Fermin Lopez head the ball clearly well. He heads the ball, and Joan Mosso is come out, and he gets a touch of that ball because it goes off somewhere around his rib cage, in preventing the goal itself. Now, in the fall through of the moment itself, there's two ways you can interpret it. Either you interpret it as Joan Mosso accidentally kicking Fermin Lopez in the face, or you can interpret it as Fermin Lopez, in his diving, following through to make contact with Joan Mosso. So, two ways. That interpretation is where I want to stand and guess what the referee's interpretation was of the moment. Because clearly, the central referee of the day, Clement, was at a distance to have seen this vividly well. So, when it comes to the contact between the goalkeeper and Fermin Lopez, he does not get to see that clearly. So it must have fallen to VR to review the incident to say maybe there's something worth reviewing or otherwise. Then, as soon as it happens, you could see Joan Mosso's concern to wave to hold play and tend to Fermin Lopez because he was bleeding. He was really, really bleeding so bad. And we saw for the rest of the game he had to play with bandages on. So there's that as well. Now, because Fermin Lopez has played the ball is gone. Joan Mosso, who is coming out to, keep his goal, gets a touch of the ball, and it's the fall through of the respective actions that these two players collide. And because also it is a bit low, it's not like a sort of karate kind of kick. Maybe karate is the strong word to use, but in other words, when you look at usually fouls involving an opponent kicking the other's head, usually it's high boots. So at the time of heading the ball is still relatively high. But when it comes to the fall through, it's a relatively low. Not too close to the ground, but sort of midway, knee kind of level thing. So, like I said, I do not know what the exact interpretation was for the match officials in there, and I wish we had a referee or a former referee or somebody more privy to the understanding of these rules to give us a deeper explanation. But to the best of my logical thinking, that is how I interpret it, how the referees may have interpreted the situation. So, you can see that there's a fair number of concerns from those Barcelona fans and perhaps the players or well-wishers in wanting to say that we felt we were robbed on the day. So you had two penalty calls, one for Dani Olmo, and that incident involving Fermin Lopez with Joan Musso, and what the interpretation of the rule may have appeared, because like it's been stated in that rule that a goalkeeper kicking an attack in the head is a serious punishable red card, sending off for violent conduct or serious foul resulting in a direct free kick or penalty for the opposing team. And then it goes on to say, even if accidental. So, in other words, is this accidental contact? Obviously, it was accidental contact of two players coming together in a fall through sort of foul. So, what the interpretations for the officials were, we will wait to understand. Perhaps if Barcelona are going to lodge a complaint to UEFA again, like they did in the aftermath of the first leg, we'll have to wait and see. Okay. And you think this is not robbery? Robert K., please wake up. I'm not saying it is robbery. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm trying to give you my best understanding of what the interpretation of the rules were at the time or in the context within which they happened. But for me particularly, what I find a bit suspicious is when you look at Dani Olmo's penalty call, the sort of nudge that he gets in the back before going down to appeal for that penalty call. When you reverse the roles and you look at the sort of nudge that Alexander Soloth gets to culminate into the red card for Eric Garcia, there's a bit of a similarity. Now, I understand the context of play in terms of phase of the game. It's both different for what is deemed last man foul, denying a goal scoring opportunity, and the other one is not a last man foul. It's basically contact within the area that may have been needed to be reviewed. So, again, that's where I have a challenge with, because if the two fouls are similar and then the punishments are different, in one case there's no punishment at all, then it becomes you sort of understand the aggravation or where Barcelona fans are picking the bone with the referee or with UEFA as a whole in this particular case. I'm tired of the same scenario each year. I'm happy my season is over. Now I can focus on studies and the remaining celebrations of La Liga, and then looking forward to the World Cup. Everything against Barcelona always. Those are the strong views of Pedri there, the Barcelona fan. So, but like I was saying, Barcelona were really, really good on the night, especially in the first half. First of all, they get an early goal, actually, before even the goal comes, in the very first minute. I think it was Lamine Yamal already testing Joan Musso. And then in Atletico de Madrid, get caught trying to build from out of the back. And then Barcelona go on to score with Ferran Torres providing the assist for Lamine Yamal. Beautifully taken goal. It's 1-0. And then I think around the 9th minute, Barcelona had another opportunity to make it 2-0. I think it was Dani Olmo. I stand to be corrected, Pedri. I think it was Dani Olmo with that particular opportunity, but he could not make it count because Joan Musso did really, really well to save from there on. Then in the 24th minute or the 21st minute, thereabout. So you had Barcelona. I mean, that pass to Ferran Torres. That was as sweet, as sublime as a through ball comes from Dani Olmo. And I remember watching that pass and thinking to myself, this is typical Barcelona, taking the risk, finding a tiny little bit of space and betting on themselves that I can play this ball in between the two defenders and find my teammates. And while I watched that, as I celebrated that moment in the beauty of it, I reflected back on how Arsenal approach their games. And I'm thinking to myself, if it is an Arsenal player in Dani Olmo's shoes, he's not playing the through pass. He's not taking that risk to play the through pass. He's going to try and find some form of safety with a sideways pass or something, or turn back and play it backwards. But Pedri does confirm for us, yes, it was almost so. It was a beautiful, beautiful goal. And then when you look at when you look at what happens, then I think around the 30, is it the around the 31st minute of the game? Yes, when on the other side they go on to score. Rashford needs to leave. I do not want to see his face ever again. Oh, why do you feel that way about why do you feel that way about Marcus Rashford? Please elucidate more about your feelings with Marcus Rashford when it comes to that. So when you rewind back in terms of the the goal that Barcelona conceded, you'll find that again it's the high line are being beaten, and we know and I think it was Thierry Henry, former Barcelona player himself, was saying having to play with that sort of high line with the kind of profile center backs that Barcelona have, it's always going to be a huge risk. It's one that is always going to come back and bite them, especially at this sort of level. And I sort of understand where he's coming from, and I sort of do relate with his view. Whereas it's been largely effective, when it's come to critical moments, especially when it comes to the UEFA Champions League, we saw why Barcelona shipped in so many goals at the semifinals against Inter Milan last season. It was because of the same high line, And we've seen a good number of results that have been where Barcelona have been exploited because of that very sort of, because of that very sort of, high line being beaten. You remember against Chelsea, remember against Club Brugge, and things like that. So I think, first of all, you need really, really fast center backs. You need really, really good defenders, 1v1, for you to escape that moment. Now, when you look at, for example, the pass from Antoine Griezmann to Marcos Llorente in the build-up to the Atletico de Madrid goal, you see that Barcelona's center backs, actually, there were two players in defending. I think one of them was Jules Koundé. And Jules Koundé is a player at the center line, and there's one Barcelona player slightly behind the center line. So you can see it's really, really high line of defending that they did deploy, that Atletico de Madrid had to beat. And I said this in the build-up, that Atletico de Madrid have tested this sort of high line before, and they've beaten it before. So they will know how to do it. They'll know how to exploit it, So, but nonetheless, take nothing away from Barcelona in that first half. They looked really, really good. Then in the second half, it was a bit of a 50-50. They did not create as many chances. It's not to say they did not have their chances, but and maybe not as good. Then, of course, the red card sort of changes the context of the game, taking the steam out of it or tilting it in the favor of Atletico de Madrid, who then go on to mount some serious attacks. They had a couple of chances in which they could have put the game straight away to bed, but Joan Garcia was really, really up to the challenge in goal. Anyways, so that was the game for Barcelona, winning 2-1, but getting knocked out 3-2 on aggregate score. Then, on the same night, we had PSG put 2 past Liverpool in a game where the first half, it was a game of 2 halves. First half, PSG were the better side. Second half, Liverpool were the better side, just could not find those clinical chances. They just could not find the back of the net. And PSG exploited that dominancy. If you remember, the game Arsenal played against PSG in the reverse fixture at the Parc des Princes, where Arsenal were really, really dominant, especially in the opening 25 minutes of the game. They still failed to score. They still failed to score. But guess what? Against the run of play, it was Fabian Ruiz finding the back of the net. And in the second half, basically that's what happened to Liverpool. They were really, really looking good. They were being dominant with the ball. They were pinging PSG back. They were getting closer to the edge of the area. They were not sometimes shooting early enough and often enough at goal, but at least they were pressing PSG really, really deep in. And then in the 72nd minute, that's where things changed. And Ousmane Dembele, who scored the brace on the night, scores a beautiful goal that then breaks the hearts of those Liverpool fans. But I thought, in terms of in as far as the first half was concerned, PSG were a better side. They created some good chances. Georgi Mamadashvili was alert to those chances. I thought he did well. But I think Liverpool, when it comes to first half chances, you ought to remember after Hugo Ekitike going off injured, and then they brought Mohamed Salah on, he crosses in a ball that I think takes a flick off of Ibrahim Konate. Then it is fumbled in the area. Milos Kakes has an attempt on goal, which is put out by Matevi Safanov, who I thought was quite brilliant in the second half. And then the rebound play forced to Virgil van Dijk, who in whose attempt to score had his own effort blocked out by Marquinhos. So much so, it looked so impressive. Marquinhos celebrated it. Virgil van Dijk, I think from one centre back to another, was like, that was a good one, mate. So more like applauding at the situation. But Liverpool's low creativity, because in the end they had 5 shots on target compared to PSG's 6. When you look at their XG, Liverpool was 1.94 compared to PSG's 1.2. But a large section of that came from a brilliant second half. Because, like I said, in the second half, Liverpool came back in, I don't know, whatever pep talk Arne Slot had given to his team, it seemed to be working. The only thing that could not work for them is that they could not go underneath Matefi Safanov. You had Mohamed Salah try. You had, I think it was Cody Gakpo try. Then you had Riongo Moha when he came on. He had his, effort kept out because it looked like it was one of the best hits of the night from a Liverpool player. It was kept up by Matevi Safanov. So really brilliant. So, and the more I watched Liverpool play in the manner in which they did, which was brilliantly well in the second half, the more I thought Liverpool are going to be vulnerable to the counter-attack, to the break, because they're overly committing. And at one point you had Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate as the last lines of defense inside, the PSG half, and that was beyond the center arc on the other side, So it looked good. They were recovering well, but nonetheless, they eventually had to fall to Ousmane Dembele, who, because of his 2 feet, Kevicha Kvaratskhelia providing an assist, which was quite sublime, but the finish from Ousmane Dembele tells it all. And then Bradley Barcola, who had to come on in the second half, replacing an injured Desiree Doué, also provided the other assist in the first minute of stoppage time to make it 2-0 for PSG. So looks like PSG will do anything but not fall to an English team. They will not lose to a Premier League team. Because when it's come to the knockout stages of the UEFA Champions League, remember last season, they beat Liverpool, they beat Aston Villa, they beat Arsenal. Now, they've beaten up against Liverpool again, and quite convincingly, 4-0 on aggregate score for them to make it to the semifinals of this year's UEFA Champions League. So beautiful performance right out there from Liverpool. But like we often say, good is sometimes not good enough. Liverpool were good, but not good enough. Whereas PSG on the other side were effective. They were simply effective. And by the way, they really defended well. They really defended well. When it came to blocking shots or intercepting those final third passes, they were really good at it, because Liverpool had 9 shots off target. They had 7 blocked shots, So that tells you that Liverpool had the intent, they're just not lucky to find the breakthrough. Anyways, so that's it from those 2 games. From the UEFA Champions League last night, those 2 teams in PSG and Atletico de Madrid have advanced to the semifinals, and are waiting to find out who their other semifinal opponents will be. We already know the trajectory of if this goes through, who do they meet? Hi, Milton. Good to have you. Milton does oftentimes join us from London. I hope you're doing okay this beautiful morning. We've missed you for the last couple of days. I hope you're okay. You know, sometimes people fall ill, and because we do not have direct communication and we only meet on this forum, it leaves me sometimes wondering what's happened to some of those people. The way I sometimes wonder about Pressing Kosi tends to go AWOL. I've not seen Yukesh, sorry, from South Africa with us in a couple of days. Peter Parker is not been with us in a bit of a while. So you have some of those usual and semi-regular suspects that have gone missing on the forum for some time now. But I hope whatever it is and wherever they are doing okay. All right. Milton says PSG and Atletico did well yesterday. Yeah, the ones that are through. So today, the action does continue for the other two quarterfinals, with Arsenal having a slim 1-0 lead against Sporting CP. The last time these two sides met in a European competition, it was Sporting CP that came through. I think it was on post-match penalties that proceeded. Was it a 1-1 draw and a 2-2 draw at the Emirates Stadium? I think it was in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Europa League for the 2022-2023 season. Summer says, I'm laughing at Barcelona till my team gets knocked out. What's your team, Summer? That's the question. Are you a Real Madrid fan? But it's good to have you on the broadcast, Summer. I do us the absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel since it's my first time seeing you here. If you haven't changed name, sometimes my people return here and they've changed their usernames or taglines. Anyways, so Arsenal versus Sporting CP. Another difficult game, a game that comes at a time when Arsenal are sort of laden with injuries. As of yesterday, I know for a fact that Yuan Timber was not in training, Declan Rice was not in training, Bukayo Saka was not in training. Who else? Martin Odegaard was not available. Ricardo Carafiori deemed not available, in addition to Mikel Merino. So, big question. Now, it's a big game. Milton says Arsenal will have a tough game, but Real Madrid may do it. Okay. I've given you some interesting facts. They could pass for coincidences, but they are nonetheless facts that every time Atletico de Madrid have knocked out Barcelona, Real Madrid have reached the finals. And then I've told you about Real Madrid reaching the finals in a World Cup. Yeah, they've done that quite often, more often than not. So there are some interesting facts in there. But let's hope there will be a demons fight in that sort of regard. Okay, then you say, Summer says, new here, I wanted Barcelona to win and Arsenal to lose, even as a Madrid fan, and we are not doing anything. Okay, you wanted Barcelona to win. Barcelona did win. They just did not go through. Then you say, and Arsenal to lose. Well, that's tonight. We'll find out at the end of 90 minutes whether they will have lost or otherwise. It's a game that could possibly go into extra time. I'm sure Arsenal wouldn't want that because over the weekend, they have a title decider, literally a title decider when they play away to Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium, a venue where they've not won since 2015. So that's a key fact. And then you're saying you're not doing anything. Well, it's not that you're not doing anything. We are waiting to find out tonight when Real Madrid play away at the Allianz Arena. They do have a sort of a good history a bit against Bayern Munich, but times have changed as well. So, in the work of Arsenal, with all those many injuries, first of all, Mikel Arteta. I don't know if he's still learning. I don't know if he's stubborn, but anyway, we all still learn, you know. We all still learn every single day. Even I learn something new almost every single day. I'm in forums where somebody mentions a key factor and you're like, oh, that happened, you know. So you learn a thing or two from your mates because people pick up on facts like chickens pick up on rice on the ground. So, but Mikel Arteta still does struggle with what we call squad rotation. I've seen him this season play players into the ground, run them into the ground, run them into injuries. Milton says Arsenal may not win against Sporting. Okay. Necessarily, they do not have to win to go through because any draw takes them through. There's that as well. So, unless you're saying going through, because that's a whole different story. So, players like Martin Zubimendi, players like UN Timber, and Declan Rice is bound to follow in that line. He's literally played them through the ground, into the ground. And we know for a fact that from the start of the season, or for the first half of the season, UN Timber was arguably one of Arsenal's best players. Of course, in the opening months of the season, Ricardo Carafiori was a key part of that. So, but what changed for UN Timber was that he played so many games without rest. Not because Mikel Arteta did not have the options, even though Ben White was sometimes injured. He basically ran him into the ground. And I don't know, when he reflects on some of these things, he regrets doing them, but, it does not look pretty. Summer says, my prediction is Atletico versus PSG, Arsenal versus Bayern. As potential finals, okay, we'll have to wait and see. Arteta is just stubborn. That is Moscow Joshua. Moscow Joshua says, I'd fancy an Arsenal versus Real Madrid final. All right, we'll have to wait and see. Real Madrid, I don't think they're the kind of team that you'd want in the final. Whereas Arsenal has a history of beating up against Real Madrid. I must note that they rarely lose a final, especially in the UEFA Champions League. Bear that in mind, careful what you wish for. But I understand what your reasons are. So I'm still talking about Mikel Arteta. Now, look at Martin Zubimendi, how he's played recently. And this dates back to even before the March international break. His form is really, really low. His confidence deep in the ground, buried underneath, layers so deep that you need to dig until you find a drop of water to sort of find his confidence. Why? Because Mikel Arteta has put himself in a position where he does not make a change to his team until he is forced to. And for me, that's not squad rotation. The only time he's rotated his squad is when he's been playing in cup competitions at the sort of preliminary stages of those cup competitions, in the EFL Cup and the FA Cup, for which he sort of lost, losing the cup final to Man City in terms of the Carabao, and then being knocked out of the FA Cup at the hands of Southampton, So I wouldn't call that rotation, because he's either done it out of, for example, I do not know why you sign a player like Christian Norgard as a squad player with all his Premier League experience, having captained a team, no matter how low you think about it or highly you regard it, in Brentford, and you tell me that in a season of possibly 38 Premier League games, you do not find at least 10 games where he's worthy of a start. You cannot tell me that. That is squad rotation. That is squad management. You cannot tell me that in a season of 38 games, you cannot find a game in the Premier League where you can play with a single pivot of either Declan Rice or Martin Zubimendi and play a more fluid midfielder. In addition to that, the only time he attempted it was against West Ham, and that game they won by 2-0. But before halftime, Martin Odegaard was withdrawn to injury for his clash with Chris Somerville, and in which he suffered, I think, a knee injury to his meniscus. So that's the only time he did it. I remember he started with Declan Rice as a single pivot. He went with Ebeleche Eze and Martin Odegaard in the same team. Now, in the absence of Martin Odegaard, you still can't play with a single pivot. And I know for a fact that I've demanded it for such a long time, to say, in this game, play Rice as a single pivot. Rotate it as you see fit, depending on the opponent. I understand in games. For example, you're going away to Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. I completely understand why you want to play a double pivot of Zubimendi and Rice. You're playing United. You're playing Chelsea. You're playing some of these big games. I completely understand. But there are some games they've gone through, and he's not changed that. So maybe he sort of sticks by the saying that if it's not broken, do not fix it. But then, when it comes to a season that is a marathon, you ought to know when to switch up your pace, when to lower your tempo, and when to sort of just stay in contention. Because sometimes that's the difference. Right now you have Arsenal players underperforming in critical areas simply because they've been run into the ground in terms of how many minutes they played thus far this season, and it's not helping them. So it's a bit of an issue. But nonetheless, expect to see maybe David Ryan goal, Ben White at right back, Piero Hincapié, who is returned to training. He could start at left back. I do not fancy he will start with Mars Lewis Kelly. He's not had a good season, despite not having plenty of playing time. Even when you've watched him, in many games he's looked lacking. So William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, midfield. Declan Rice did not train yesterday. When he was asked between Declan Rice and, I think he was asked about Declan Rice and Yohan Timber, if there's a possibility that one of them returns for today's fixture, and he said yes, there was a possibility that one does return, but in the event that they don't return, remember they do not have Mikel Merino, so do not be surprised if you see a Martin Zubimendi alongside Kai Havertz with Ebeleche Eze in the 10 role. And then, but should Declan Rice be fully fit or fit enough to return, because he suffered an injury in that loss to AFC Bournemouth. There's a key moment where he's running and jumps to head the ball, but he sort of, I think, lands a little bit awkwardly, and you could see instantly that he had a tweak to his ankle. Okay, you say, Summer says, do you think Gabriel Martinelli or Saka deliver up to what Arteta wants? Defensively, maybe, but attacking specifically when we saw what Lamine Yamal does for Barcelona. I do not think there's an Arsenal winger this season that has been good. I think they've all been average when you look at the overall spectrum of the season. Gabriel Martinelli has done fairly well in the UEFA Champions League and Cup competitions, but in the Premier League, he's totally been shambolic. Only one goal to his name in the Premier League. When it comes to Bukayo Saka, ever since he suffered his hamstring injury last season, he's never been the same player. He's struggled for form and full fitness. So I do not think he's offered you that. Nonetheless, he remains one of their most potent wingers. So then you look at Noni Madueke, very good player, poor decision maker, poor final ball, and that is what is still letting him down. He needs to, I don't know what he trains most about, but he needs to train his final pass. That final pass, that through ball, that cross, he really, really needs to work on that. Otherwise, he oftentimes looks so really, really poor with it. Thank you so much, Sama, for that question. Real are trailing 1-2, so that will be a tough against Bayern Munich. Indeed, it will be tough, but let's not forget, there's a reason Real Madrid are the most successful team in the history of the UEFA Champions League, with 15 titles to their name, and Bayern Munich have only 6. So then you say that was my observation yesterday, and I believe they deliver upon what Arteta wants. I do not think they've done it sufficiently well, really. By the way, you see, I'll keep saying this. The difference between a good player and a great player, or a good player and an exceptional player, is in their decision making, is in their consistency, in the form of performances and availability, is that situational analysis in the context of the game. Look at Leandro Trossard. Leandro Trossard was one of Arsenal's best players in the first half of the season, but he's since disappeared. Everything that he touches these days looks like shit, So, okay. Summer says Arsenal midfield lacks in lacks inventiveness. Yes, and so does Arsenal. A wing play overload is a very important tactic play in breaking a low block. You're right about that. Now, again, the ingenuity or the lack of inventiveness comes from the conservative midfield. Traditionally, Declan Rice is a 6. He's been moved into an 8 or pushed to play an 8. Martin Zubimendi is a 6. Yes, he can play as an 8, but is traditionally a 6. So in that way, you have two conservative players that you deploy constantly. And then you struggle with creativity. Then also, what Arsenal do or play is always the same. I can sit here and tell you that expect to see 100 passes between William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, and David Raya. Expect to see fewer passes between whoever the attacking midfielder is chosen in that 10 role or free role, whether it's a Beleche Eze or Kai Havertz, whoever it is, between him and a Martinelli and a Bukayo Saka, or a Noni Madueke or a Victor Gyökeres. You know, the number of passes that will be played between the two center backs, the goalkeeper and the number 6 tonight, will be astronomical. So that lack of creativity, that lack of intent to go forward, let me tell you, an Arsenal defender or player will find himself in between two opponents. And instead of attempting a line-breaking pass forward, they would rather turn backwards. Go and watch Barcelona's second goal yesterday when Dani Olmo makes the assist for Ferran Torres. Trust me, 7 out of 10 times of asking, an Arsenal player is going to turn and pass that ball sideways to the wing or to a player immediately in his back, as opposed to attempting that line-breaking pass. Now, when we talk about that, that is the risk that they ought to take. You're not always going to be successful. Sometimes the opponent is going to be very good at intercepting some of those passes. But nonetheless, attempt them and hope that when you lose that ball in the final third of the opponent's area, you can recover before they get to your goal. Then, you remember the first leg when they won by 1-0 against Sporting CP. The one thing I appreciated about Sporting Lisbon is that they attempted as many through passes as possible. They were not always successful, but at least the intent was there. So Arsenal do not show that intent, you know. Okay. Musgwa says, Rice too is facing the same fate at this rate. Exactly. His performance has dipped. His form is down. Why? He's been run into the ground. Why? Because at the time when Mikel Arteta had the opportunity to do it, he never did it. He never rotated him. He never said, no matter how good you're playing, you're starting this game on the bench. I'm going to give a Christian Nogard, a Mikel Merino 60 minutes. You'll come in for the last 30 minutes. He's not done that. And that is squad management. That is load management. Because it's a long season. It can be breaking. Mentally, physically, psychologically. It can be breaking. You know? So, for people that were making the allegations or the sort of narrative that Arsenal players had faked injuries during the international break to return early, how many have not played ever since then? Bukayo Saka has been out. Piero Hincapié has been out. Martin Odegaard returned for 2.5 games and went back to the sick bay. So that tells you what I was explaining for those of you that were part of this forum, that sometimes these players play through injury. And that's what has happened with Bukayo Saka. According to Mikel Arteta, he had played with an issue, you know. And they're not the first to do it. They're not going to be the last. Players will always play with a bit of an injury or carrying a ego here and there. But nonetheless, it's the commitment that they have for the game. It's up to the manager, the team doctors to say, yeah, we understand you'd love to play, but perhaps sit this one out before bad goes to worse. Okay. Mosquera says Arteta's system limits attackers because he overloads them with a lot of defensive duties. I have no problem with offensive players doing defensive duties. My problem with his system is that it often seeks safety and it will risk it all to play a safe pass than risk it to play an offensive pass, you know? So the idea of safety first for me is what bores me, is what kills it for me, you know? Again, look at those midfielders. A lot of times they're going to receive the ball, and on the turn, they're going to face back in their own direction, in their own goal, as though they are trying to score in their own goal. Make the turn in the offensive. I'll give you an example. Martin Odegaard will receive a ball, or Declan Rice or Martin Zubimendi will receive a ball in the middle of the park, and he has 5 players in the offense, 5 or 6 players in the offensive, and he has about 3 easily accessible players at the back. He's going to turn backwards. At least he will go as far back as to the goalkeeper. And then the goalkeeper will do this thing that they do, control the ball and step on it as if waiting for some, some form of godly message to come to them before they play that ball again. Sometimes, just keep passing the ball. Improve the intensity or the speed at which you pass that ball. Because every time you give the ball to your teammate, you're asking them to think. You're asking them to think. And for midfielders, I don't know what's happened to most of the midfielders today. As a midfielder, you must be constantly scanning the pitch. By the time you receive the ball, you know where you're going to put it. You may not always be successful, but at least you know. And usually, you have at least 3 options. Depending on the angle with which you receive the ball, you must have those options. Now, I'm not against playing a back pass. If you're going to play the back pass and position yourself to receive the ball again and then transition it forward. But when it's offering the backward pass, it becomes monotonous, you know? Okay, Kai Havertz is useless if the midfield isn't overloaded with line-breaking passes. Exactly, because he wants to run into those spaces. He's not a good ball carrier. Kai Havertz is not going to be a ball carrier, you know? He's hardly going to be the guy that plays the intricate pass, you know. So then Milton says, okay, 2 matches yesterday decided, and now 2 more today. So any predictions? Yes, we'll get to the predictions in a bit. Cedric joins us from France, says, good morning, guys. How are you? A quick message. Big shout out for Atletico Madrid, rooting for Arsenal tonight. Thank you so much, Cedric, for your kind words and message. So, all right, so those are Arsenal's challenges. And again, look at their striker in Victor Gyökeres. A lot of people have criticized him, his overall involvement in getting himself in the game. Guys, unless you started watching Victor Gyökeres yesterday, and you do not need to have watched him at Sporting CP. Just go read what they used to write about him at Sporting CP. He's not a Gabriel Jesus type of striker that is going to come and participate in this interplay. He's not your Hurricane. He's not that. He's the guy that is going to wait up front for the ball to be brought to him, play him that quick pass early enough, and let him run in space. Give him as many passes as you can. Create for him as many chances as possible. But he's given 3 or 5 passes, he fumbles 2 or 3, and then suddenly everybody wants to sing doom and gloom against him. Create the chances. For me, when Arsenal wake up on a day when they've created 10 chances for him and he's not converted any, or he's converted only 1 and missed the other 9, I'll begin criticizing him. But for as long as they were to give him that 1 ball every 5 minutes, it's never going to work for him. If he has to wait 5 minutes to get his second touch of the ball, it's never going to work with him. He's never going to fall into the rhythm of the game, you know. And when you give him the ball, because you know his holder play is oftentimes not at its best, how quickly do you get to him for that 1 touch to you, and then he moves himself back in space again to receive the ball? How many times have we seen him make runs in the right spaces, in the right direction, and is not being found by his teammates or even being attempted to be found a lot of times. And I think it becomes a frustration for him. So, whereas he's trying to adapt to how Arsenal plays, oftentimes I felt that they have not tried well enough to adapt to him. You know? But anyways, those are my feelings about them. Okay, as Cedric says, back passes show a lack of vision when the ball doesn't move forward quickly. Exactly. But that is the sole responsibility of midfielders. That's the sole responsibility of midfielders. You must be putting yourself in spaces to receive the ball. I cannot blame it on William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes to constantly pass the ball to themselves. Why? The reason as to why that is happening is because the ball carriers who are supposed to transition that ball from defense on forward have not come for it. You ought to come for it. Like I said, a midfielder is supposed to be scanning the entire pitch. I don't know how many Arsenal fans of you are here, but I'll give you examples. I'll give you even examples beyond Arsenal. Go back and watch Xavi, constantly scanning the pitch. Iniesta. Go back to Cesc Fabregas, not the one of Chelsea or Barcelona, the one of Arsenal, constantly scanning the pitch to see as soon as I receive this ball, who am I passing it to? If there is space to run into, I'll be the one to carry it. But the first instinct is, as soon as I receive that ball, I'm passing it to him and I'm going in that space. If it's a forward pass, I'm continuing forward. If it's a back pass, I'm moving either across or a little backwards to receive it again and go again. How many times do you see Arsenal players do that? So there is a bit of lack of that. So you remember Santi Cazorla? He used to do that. You know, you remember Thomas Rosicky constantly. I mean, the idea of a one-touch pass comes from that effectiveness, that you're constantly aware of the danger of the opponents, but also where your teammates are. So I think that's a critical issue, and I'm glad that Milton agrees. So anyways, Asama says Arsenal number 8 should learn from Pedri or Abeloa's deployment of Pitach, Gula and Brahim on how Atletico deployed Llorente and Ruggeri. Okay, thank you so much, Sama. Joshua says, you're spot on. Prioritizing safety is the issue. Doesn't this in a way brainwash players' instinct to attack and take risks to one who is always thinking of control and making safe passes? Now, you see, people think that when we make the argument of taking risk, we're then saying the result is that you're going to concede a lot. Again, football is about situational analysis. Where are you receiving the ball from? What risk can you afford to take in that? And what can you afford not to take? Like I said, in my experience or in my observation, they are okay taking the risk to play a back pass to David Raya or David Raya passing it to a defender who is being closed in than in the offensive side. So every time you take a risk in playing a forward pass, bear this in mind, that you're going to, the chances of you losing that ball are really high. So how you position yourself to recover from losing that ball is also important. You know, Yannick Bolasie said it in the aftermath of the FC Bournemouth game that Arsenal lost over the weekend, that today he looks at those Arsenal wingers and they're afraid of losing the ball. But yet a winger, when you receive the ball, the first instinct should be, I have a defender before me. How do I take him on? How do I dribble past him? And bet that if I lose this ball, I have a teammate that is going to help me recover, as I also play catch up in my defensive duties, if need be. You know, but you must attempt it. You know, you cannot constantly receive the ball as a winger, and before you even think of running forward to maybe make a cross or take on the defender, your first instinct is, where's the number 8? I pass it back to him. You know, where's the number 10? I pass it back to him. You know, you must be willing to take the risk, you know. And when you look at players like Luis Figo, it's not because every time they attempted dribbles, they were successful. No, it's because they constantly repeated the same thing until they got the desirable result out of it. It's not like Mo Salah has been dribbling past players for fun. It's not like Eden Hazard was always successful in dribbling past defenders. It's not the case that Lionel Messi was always successful. It's not the case that Cristiano Ronaldo was always successful in dribbling past players. So many times they lose the ball, or they did lose the ball, but there was that intent to attack, to take the risk, Okay. All right. Cedric says playing the safe pass used to be France's motto for decades, and we never won. Only after Jacquet said we have a tight defense, but always move forward. Then we got the first World Cup. Then Milton says the midfield are so important for moving forwards and attacking. That's true. Very astute analysis of what is required from the midfield. So yeah, those Arsenal have to be intentional in attempting doing those things. And by the way, now this is where maybe their conundrum is. Watch Ebeleche Eze play, and I've seen him played slightly in the deeper midfield role, kind of number 8. But even if that's not the case, oftentimes his instinct is one-touch pass. I receive the ball, I'm passing it to him, I'm moving in this area. If there's space for me to carry it, I'll carry it. And he's constantly attempting those passes to try and find his teammates, and you want to see that more often. Obviously, he's going to lose the ball sometimes. So then, when do we trust that if I lose the ball somewhere in the midfield or in the opponent's half, I'm going to trust that my defenders are good enough to help me recover, that my goalkeeper is good enough to make a save if we've blundered? That's all risk that you ought to take. Look at how PSG play. They risk it so much sometimes that you're going to find Achraf Hakimi in the final third. Nuno Mendes has followed up somewhere close to him, in addition to Vitinha leaving the midfield, in addition to the front three of Ousmane Dembele, Desli Doué, and Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. But who is then left? It's Willian Pacho, Marquinhos, and maybe a João Neves that are sort of protecting. Why? Because these guys are risking it and hoping that should we mess up, these guys are going to help us at least keep things a bit in check as we run back to do our own recovery or to help with the recovery. But not all of them are still going to run back. So you must bear that in mind. And then when it comes to traditional strikers remind you of the traditional play. Forward players never used to chase the ball. No. It was the role of central midfielders and defenders to win the ball back. Obviously, football has changed. But when you play with a traditional striker, look at Erling Haaland. Nobody was criticizing him for a lack of involvement in play because Man City knew who they were playing with. All they needed was create for him chances, let him score them. That's his role. Now, after 3 seasons with Man City, his interplay has improved to the extent that this season, Haaland has 7 Premier League assists. So, do not tell me that Victor Gyökeres is not doing A, B, C, D. How many chances are you creating for him? How many crosses are you attempting at the byline? So, for as long as those things, they're not intentional on those things, they're going to find it very challenging. So, today's game does pose to be very, very difficult. Noni Madueke, the one thing I want him to improve on is his final ball. That decision making, whether he's going to play a cross, whether he's trying to find a line breaking pass, that's the only thing I want him to improve. But when it comes to attempting to take on players, he's not always going to be successful. Sometimes he's going to run it out of play, But let him keep attempting that. Let him get himself on the ball as often as possible, Then sometimes Kai Havertz has a habit of getting lost in the game, especially when he's played as a midfielder. It's the way he sort of disappears in the game, in a way. Leandro Trossard, for him, it's just form. His form is just poor. But I would want to see him do more because for Arsenal to be successful, midfield, forwards, they have to be really, really good, as well as their backline taking care of their business. So on the side of Sporting CP, you have players like Luis Suarez, Francesco Trincao, Pedro Goncalves, who are really, really can be nightmares. Then Guinea Katamo, I think he, in the first leg, had an attempt, very, very good player by the Guinea Katamo. So Usman Diomande, you remember the attempted pass that he made for Maximiliano Araujo in the first leg, you know? So, and by the way, the last thing Arsenal fans would want is to see their team get beat with the same script, because Bournemouth got the script that Manchester City used in the second leg of the Carabao Cup final to beat Arsenal. So if Sporting CP come up with the same, I hope Mikel Arteta will have found solutions this time around. Mwesika says Arsenal should just revert to the basics, rise back to the traditional six and not this box-to-box thing. Then have Eze and Havertz in front for the harder matches, to have Rice at a six, Eze and Norgard, Zubi, exactly. Exactly. But in some games, you ought to play with a single pivot, have more creative players. Have your Kai Havertz, have your Ebeleche Eze on the same pitch. Tell them every time we receive the ball, we are going forward. I do not care what is forward, we are going forward. You're either carrying the ball forward, you're passing it forward. We're trying to find those tiny bits of spaces, as opposed to when we receive the ball, first look at who is behind you and see if you can pass it backwards. That's what they need to cut out. Will Arsenal play Saka and Madueke? Not sure. It never works out. And the reason for that is that these guys, I do not know whether they are limited. The reason is because, again, I'll say, it's about situational analysis. I remember in the game against Everton that they eventually won by 2-0. There came a moment, because it started with Bukayo Saka, Madueke, and Ebeleche Eze. And as Constant is saying, can't these guys see that it's not working? They need to switch. Let Noni Madueke go to the right, let Saka come centrally, and then push Eze to the left. Have it, switch it a bit, give defenders a different test, because Saka was being put out of the game by Vitaly Myakalenko. Noni Madueke was struggling because every time he sort of cut back on the inside, he found himself on his weaker foot, which was the right foot, and I think had about only one shot on goal with that foot. And then it is after, I think a few minutes prior to him being withdrawn for Max Dorman, that he has another shot on goal after he had switched up to go and occupy Saka's space. So I'm thinking to myself, you do not need to be told to rotate. Do it depending on how the game goes. Players used to do this all the time. If you're constantly attacking your opponent, but for about 15 to 30 minutes, you see this guy is really, really good 1v1 against you, make the switch. Go to the other wing, let the other winger come this side. Let him have their own. That's what PSG do. Now, PSG have a very fluid front three. They keep switching. If you're right back, at one time, it's Kivicha Kvaratskhelia coming after you. Before you know it, it's Ousmane Dembele. Before you know it, it's Desiree Doué or Bradley Bakola, depending on who starts. Why? Because they are trying to find solutions. If I'm failing to beat my opponents, let Saka try. Let's switch it up. So they need to be switching things up in that sense. I think we should borrow Spain's and Sociedad template on how to use Zubi Mendy. By the way, I do not think Zubi Mendy is bad. He's been very, very good, by the way. For me, he's been one of the signings of the season. The drop-off in performances, or what you could call lapses in concentration and everything that's cumulative fatigue. That's just cumulative fatigue. Why? Because he's never been in this situation before. He's never been in a season where Real Sociedad are playing in the UEFA Champions League, pushing for the La Liga title, and playing in these cup competitions at the high stages of the quarterfinals and semifinals, like they did in the Carabao Cup and eventually the final. So it's the first time he's experiencing this. It's his debut campaign in the Premier League, So it's bound to take a toll on you. So his drop off, that's cumulative fatigue. That's, again, watch him after about 60 minutes or 65 or 70. Watch him. That's usually when he starts to lose his concentration. That's when he feels lethargic. Okay. Raymond says hi. Okay, Newcastle today should sack Ed Howe now and Zabi Alonso. But yesterday you are saying Zabi Alonso. You are saying sorry, Andoni Iraola. So which is which, Raymond? Anyways, always a pleasure to see you back. So that's it for the what predictions for today's match? Yes, that's what I was getting to. For Arsenal, Sporting Lisbon, I think it's going to be a very difficult game. I won't be surprised if it ends, let's say, in a 1-all draw, but I'll fancy Arsenal's chances to nick it by 2-1. That's my prediction. But I wouldn't be surprised if it ended in a draw because of Arsenal's way of playing. Because I think we've spent the entire season hoping that at one point Arsenal are going to wake up and play the kind of more fluid, more proactive attacking football, and it's just not come. I don't think they're going to start today, even though in the Champions League they are playing in a very, very different manner. Once they got to the knockout stages of the competition, they brought their Premier League template to the UEFA Champions League, which was contrary to what they used to do in the league phase of the UEFA Champions League. So then let's move on to Bayern Munich against Real Madrid, another very, very difficult fixture. So Arsenal to squeeze through and between Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Yes, that's what we're getting through. But yeah. Okay, so it's a very, very difficult game between Bayern Munich and Real Madrid. Not because Real Madrid are in a good place. It's because of Real Madrid's pedigree. It's in any case, it's Bayern Munich that are in a good place. I think they've had a very, very decent season. They've not lost many games. I stand to be corrected, but I think they've lost 2 games thus far, 2 or 3 this season. But they've been really, really good, Bayern Munich. On the other side, Real Madrid do not have form on their side. They lost to Mallorca the other day. They drew against Girona on Friday ahead of this particular game. I think they've conceded the Spanish La Liga title. Mathematically, they are still in it, but you do not see a Barcelona that has now exited the UEFA Champions League squandering a 9-point lead in the remaining 6 games that are left to play. So they know that they need to win about 6 games. Sorry, they need to win about 3 games and draw 1 or win 4 games, and they will have clinched the 29th Spanish La Liga. So I do not think Real Madrid think of themselves that way. So what makes Real Madrid dangerous in the UEFA Champions League is that they know how to rise to the occasion at a moment. I had not given them a big chance against Manchester City, but nonetheless, I also did acknowledge that it's a team that knows the moment. It's a team that knows the level of performance that you need to put in the UEFA Champions League. I think it was Thierry Henry who said, when Real Madrid put on that white shirt on a UEFA Champions League night, they are just different. They are just different. So when it comes to player availability, of course, I think it was someone who brought us to the know that Chouameni is going to be absent this one through disciplinary suspension. And then Raul Asensio had an issue. Rodrigo Goes is out of this one. Not that they would miss him anyway. Thibaut Courtois has been out. And again, I can never overemphasize the importance of a good goalkeeper in this competition. Yesterday, when I was watching Liverpool lose by 2-0, particularly when it came to the first goal, I looked at Georgi Mamadashvili and I was thinking, maybe Alson Ramses Baker keeps this one out. It's not a given, but I was just thinking. We remember Manuel Neuer was the man of the match in the first leg at the Santiago Bernabeu. And again, it was not because Real Madrid did not create chances. They had loads of chances. Manuel Neuer was just good. He was the difference maker in that particular tie. Willis Star, Hurricane, and Luis Diaz squad on the other side. So, in terms of the fixture itself, Real Madrid are not the underdogs, even though form is not on their side. When you look at head-to-head, oftentimes Real Madrid have knocked out Bayern Munich. And I think the last manager who had one against Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu. You have to go back to 25 years ago that Bayern Munich had last won at the Bernabeu, and now Vincent Kompany has done it. But when you look at the historical context of this particular fixture, the very last results, when you go back to the 2023-2024 campaign, for which Real Madrid reached the final and beat Borussia Dortmund by 2-0, they knocked out Bayern Munich at the semifinals, and they beat Bayern Munich by 2-1 at the Santiago Bernabeu, and the reverse fixture had ended in a 2-all draw at the Allianz Arena. Then you also rewind things back in 2018. The two sides met, and there was a 2-all draw and a 2-1 victory for Real Madrid in that one. The 2-1 victory came at the Allianz Arena, while the 2-all draw came at the Santiago Bernabeu. Then you go back to 2017. I think now, in both occasions or in both years, 2017 and 2024, again, on all occasions, Real Madrid reached the finals. So every time Real Madrid knocked out Bayern Munich, they reached the finals of the UEFA Champions League. That is why I was asking you guys, or saying, guys, do you think we will see more of the same? You remember in 2014, Real Madrid put 4 past Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena and had won the reverse fixture by 1-0, and that was in 2014. They made it to the finals. So, in other words, Bayern Munich have not knocked out Real Madrid at the knockout stages of the competition. So it's an interesting fact. Vincent Kompany is looking to write history. All they need is a draw for Bayern Munich to go through, but ultimately they'll be going for the win. In terms of player power, of course, Kylian Mbappe remains the danger man on Real Madrid's side. Vinicius Jr., very, very capable. Fede Valverde has sort of been in his stride in recent times. He even scored that goal, a brilliant goal against Girona in their 1-all draw. Maybe the game being played in German favors Bayern Munich. Not necessarily, but it does give them a little bit of an advantage. Yeah, there's always that home advantage. But again, it's Real Madrid. They can turn up on any given day. So Bayern Munich will need to watch Vinicius Jr., Kylian Mbappe, Fede Valverde, and then those long pinpoint passes from Alexander Trent-Arnold. The Real Madrid will also need to deploy themselves the same way how Fede Valverde has to help Alexander Trent-Arnold in terms of defensive duties, because he sort of can struggle if he started at right back when it comes to defensively. You remember in the first leg of the round of 16 when they beat up against Manchester City, oftentimes you had Fede Valverde retreat back quickly to help Trent Alexander-Arnold with his defensive duties to avoid him being isolated in a 1v1 situation against Jeremy Doku. So you wouldn't want him to constantly find himself in a 1v1 versus a Luis Diaz, in that sort of sense. The same thing has to be done for Fran Garcia on the other side if he's to face Michael Olise. That's if Alvaro Carreras is not available for this fixture. And then also if let's say Ferland Mendy is not available to start in this one. So those will be the demands. Then in that midfield, Tchouaméni will be a miss for Real Madrid, will be a miss. But I'm thinking maybe Thiago Pina alongside Eduardo Camavinga or Jude Bellingham can sort of give Real Madrid something to hold on to, Then on the side of Bayern Munich, Michael Olise, what a player. And Luis Diaz, what a debut campaign is having with the German champions. Hurricane, we know about all his prowesses. He scored 51 goals in the UEFA Champions League thus far, one more than Mohamed Salah. Mohamed Salah is the highest African goal-scoring player in the history of the UEFA Champions League with 50 goals. Joshua Kimmich in that midfield alongside Alexander Pavlovich, they may have a long night. Bayern Munich's backline is sometimes suspect, with especially Dayot Upamecano. If you can take him on, you can get him into errors. Jonathan Tah has largely been a bit solid, but Josip Stanisic and Konrad Lemar will form the fullbacks. But Manuel Neuer, once again, will need to bring his A game if Bayern Munich are to advance to the semifinals. My prediction for that one, my gut feeling is going for a 2-2 draw. I know I went for the similar scoreline against Liverpool and PSG yesterday, and I got it horribly wrong. Whereas I got the one for Barcelona correct, but I'm thinking it's going to be close, very entertaining tie, end-to-end kind of football, but I'm thinking it goes to 2 or 3-2 in favor of Bayern Munich, but most likely a 2-2 draw. So that's my anticipation. That's what I think would happen or could go down in this particular fixture. But let's wait and see. If the situation favors me, like it did last night, we'll do the live watch along, start right from the onstart of these games. But if it does not favor me, then we'll start live at halftime or slightly after halftime. So depending, just like we did yesterday. Yesterday we started with the games and went through for 2 hours and enjoyed the bit of it. So it's going to be nervous. There'll be some misery at the end of the night, depending on what team you support. There'll be some joy at the end of the night. I can simply wish you the best of luck with your respective teams that you pay allegiances to. You say it's a close match, but maybe more difficult for Real Madrid. Yeah, because I understand, because Bayern Munich have clearly had the better season. In the UEFA Champions League, they've only lost one game thus far, and that was the 3-1 loss to Arsenal. Then they've been good. They put 10 over 2 legs against Atlanta at the round of 16. So yeah, there's reason. I mean, that front four of Bayern Munich, Jamal Musiala, Michael Olise, Luis Diaz, and Harry Kane, or instead of Jamal Musiala, you could see Serge Gnabry. That front four can cause you lots and lots of nightmares, can cause your defenders lots and lots of troubles. Anyways, guys, it's been a fruitful discussion. Allow me to wrap it up here. It's been 1.5 hours of us engaging. Thank you so much for your input in this discussion. Thank you so much, Milton. Thank you so much, Cedric. Thank you so much, Sama. Thank you so much, Mwesgwa Joshua, Raymond Kangumba, for all of you that have been part of this discussion. Pedri, wherever you disappeared to, thank you so much. I understand you had school. Adash, thank you so much for always sparing us the time to be part of these discussions and make your contribution down through the engagement section. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck. Let's re-engage in the night if factors are all kept constant, because sometimes when power goes off, my hands are tied. I can hardly do much. Thank you, sir. Look forward to the matches. Stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.